Hello, this is Michael Vanderpool, and I'm going to be talking about Zoom technology and some very positive experiences with that as of late, and the power of reach internationally through certain organizations or formats such as Zoom technology, and even for an educational base, and some of the webinars that I initially attended here. So this is kind of some of the topic, also on a personal level, just comments about my personal situation regarding the global pandemic, COVID-19, and travel considerations internationally, and in general, just very informal conversation. So to start, I am in the city of Tbilisi, the country of Georgia, which is on the Black Sea coast and the Black Sea region, as well as the South Caucasus Mountains. So it's a very beautiful day here. I just come back from Radio Cafe, which is across the street here. There's a lovely bridge over the river that flows through the center of Tbilisi here, and that's about 3 or 4 minutes walk from here. Yesterday I made a short video here and talked about earlier that morning there was the beautiful aroma or smell of roses here, and I couldn't determine, since it was a Sunday morning, if it was it wasn't a particular incense. I'm very familiar with the church incenses here, the Georgian Orthodox Church, the shop near, or other underground shops, and I don't mean underground as in underground, I mean the walkways that go under the streets here. So, not to be misunderstood, in the context I use the term underground, but in some of the shops it wasn't that type of incense. This is a very strong scent of rose, and I was with that scent. Is very, very strong, very pleasant, very beautiful smell, the scent of rose, as I was watching 4 women initially, and then later joined by a 5th woman doing yoga here at this park. So this is just you know, about a 30-second walk to Radio Cafe, where I had the best shawarma sandwich ever. They've got both pork and chicken, and I've still got the coffee Americano, or American coffee. And excuse me during this video, because from time to time I'm going to be checking the time, which I'm going to do right now. So you'll see me do that throughout this video. I'm also using this as a practice because I've got the boom mic, I've got the tripod with a level for the mount, for the handy cam that I'm using, and also have observed and noticed the different angles and times of the day in terms of lighting using natural light. So this is a lot of what I'm also up to, in getting more familiar with this device that I'm using to film my talk, my chat here live on video. So not live, but on video for later, let's say that. It's not live. On that topic though, I am very happy about the Zoom technology. First I used it when invited onto a webinar by 2 different NGOs here, at least. There was 2 different webinars I participated in as a journalist, as invited, and then I registered and was accepted into the webinars here in Georgia. One was with Civic Idea, an NGO. The other one was with, I think, the South Caucasus, the Freedom House of the South Caucasus, Freedom House NGO. And those were with some American officials, military or diplomatic or ambassadorial or present or current U.S. officials, and other European and Georgian officials on those webinars. So that's the first experience I had with Zoom. And then there was another organization that I was on with Zoom just about, well, I believe it was Sunday, but Saturday or Sunday. And it was an international organization, and there were close to 800 people from around the world in different countries, many countries of which I'd have to listen to closely, because they were anywhere from, you know, as large as the United States, for example, all the way down to some island nations, and from all the different continents in the world. So we had an amazing Zoom meeting, conference, and whether you were just choosing to go with the audio, computer audio, or whether you were actually on the actual call-in number, or whether you were also using your video for video conferencing or video in this Zoom meeting, it was fantastic because there was discussion where we could present some comments or some questions or some sharing about some stories or concepts or life or whatever. So it was fantastic. But that's an incredible real-time, live, instant meeting through Zoom. It was real, with video, with audio options, and or call-in options, and from almost 800 people from countries from all over the world. And so that was an amazing, very powerful, very informative experience, because we got to hear about different topics that we, the participants, could bring up and discuss or share with each other and comment on with each other, and it was just amazing. So that was also through Zoom. And there was another educational based Zoom meeting in which I was on with the life coach, the educator, one of the best fashion photographers in the world. And it just so happened that she's right now based in LA, but I had the great pleasure of being, I think, probably, it looked to me, if I go back and remember correctly, it looked like I was the first person to ask the questions. There was a pretty good lengthy question and answer period, which shows the quality of working with this one of the best in the world in terms of getting an education online, with that, a further education with that, additional education with that. So that was very cool to be able to be one of the first people in the world with about 250 to 300 people minimum. That at times it might even have been 700, but I know it was a minimum of about 250 to 300 at least. And here I'm getting my question directly answered by the best, one of the best award-winning, highest paid, successful fashion photographers in the world, instantly through Zoom. And so that was live, that was real, that was instant, that was a live meeting through Zoom and a live stream. So I'll check the time. And in checking the time on this device, this is one of the things that I wish I would have gotten a device with a red light on it for when the recording is actually active, but I don't have that with this particular device, so that's something I'll be looking for on the next device that I buy and use for filming. So that's more about Zoom. Zoom has been really fantastic. It's a very, very powerful tool and format, because it's just been, whether it's a webinar in terms of participating as a journalist, with an NGO, or with U.S. authorities or military or ambassadorial, or even European, Georgian, U.S. Authorities or former authorities on the call as a journalist, or whether it's you're participating in an international organization that's been around since 1915, and actually that's the incorporated in the U.S. Chapter of that. It's actually been around for a lot longer than that, way longer than that. And then, so whether it's an educational organization, such as with the best education in the world on fashion photography at whatever level you're at, beginner, or you've already got an education in that, there's like 1,000 classes or 1,000 hours involved in that. And so whether it's any of these things, the power to be on with the best organizations or the best experts or authorities, if it's webinar with you're doing journalism, or whether it's the just pure education, with the best in the world. So there's this phenomenon that's been talked about by others about the phenomena of not just masterclass, but being able to be educated from the best in the world through the World Wide Web or through the internet. And so that's something I'm already actively engaged in, but especially since coming on to Zoom meetings for the first time as invited here by the NGOs in Georgia, in the South Caucasus. And so since then, it's phenomenal to be able to have that kind of reach, that power of discussion with, for example, the almost 800 people live, instant, including the United States. It's really great to hear about what was going on and on some particular topics out of the United States, and people from all over the United States. But not only that, like I said, from all over the world, certain island nations, other continents, certainly Australia, for example. So it's just really phenomenal. And there's this great tool is Zoom meetings. So if you are watching this and you see one of those targeted ads, or you've clicked through and you've wanted to do something with a master class or find out something more, like I've also taken a couple of courses this year through Udemy, Udemy, and that's pretty phenomenal too. And but also one of the things we're being taught by this life coach and educator in the realm of photography, best in the world, award-winning, one of the highest earnings, etc., is also as a business tool. So Zoom meetings in terms of doing business in times where, like what we just went through here, for example, it's still just opening up in some ways from the COVID-19, emergency medical law shutdown. So, it was a time where unless you did have a technology like Zoom meetings, it was very hard to do anything in terms of business for a period of time here for at least a few months. So that's even being suggested as a tool for those times when you're doing remote work or people aren't able to come and meet in person. Like you're not able to meet at your business or at your office or in person, face to face. So it's better to do, a video meeting, audio through Zoom, Zoom meeting than not. And it's a much more powerful interaction when you're doing that. So it's a pretty good tool. It's one that it's easy to use and set up, but it's one that I want to learn more about in terms of any nuances or just getting more familiar with that technology, like I'm doing this video device right now and making this film. And on that note, I'm going to again check the time. And in the future, like I said, I will buy one with the red recording light visible from the front. And then on the note about this opening up here, step by step further from the emergency medical law shutdown for the global pandemic with COVID-19, Radio Cafe had just announced earlier today that they're happy to say that they're open on the inside as well, because I had my sandwich there and coffee Americano, which I got a second one to go. I had it out there in front under the Black Lion umbrella. It's actually a brewery here that makes a Georgian beer, and of course the Georgians are known and have honestly some of the best cognac and other alcohols, but especially wine. It's one of the best, in my opinion, in the world, as well as mineral water. So that particular beer that is part of the umbrellas over there, it's a darker brand of beer. I've actually had it on Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. I've had it and tasted it. It's really fantastic. It's a darker brew if you choose that one, and it's more full. It's a more rich beer in terms of its taste. Anyway, the Black Lion is there on the it's part of the logo, it's part of the advertising for that beer, and I remember that from Fashion Week because I had one or two on Fashion Week one year when they were there as part of the Fashion Week. In fact, I filmed at the Wine Factory #1 and the creative director of Tbilisi Fashion Week, not Tbilisi Fashion Week, but Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week was there, Sophia, and I had some photos of her. But that wine factory, from that event in the wine factory, where they actually had an exhibition of some of the fashion here. I think it was Tatuna or Tatiana. Anyway, she was with Irma de Flores, who is also a fashion designer, very mystical woman, very magical woman, and very unique fashion shows that she puts together and has on Fashion Week. So I have photos of those two together actually talking for a bit there. And but what comes to mind is the wine. There are so many. It's huge. It's grand. There's like an indoor section, an outdoor section, the old style bar, wine cellar style on the inside, and then the upper part was more just pure exhibition of all the fashion by the designer, and the clothes were there. And so it was just, it's a really unique place to visit when you want to come and have a full, like, 2-week or even month experience. If you're European, I know you're thinking about where to go for the month. So about this other technology, let me jump back to the second technology. There was a tool talked about by International Living, author of a book that International Living is having some newsletters with or notifications about, some write-ups about, and he's actually on a video where he talks about like a snaglet or snaggle. It's a tool where you capture like a screenshot, but the nice thing about that tool is that at the same time that this tool was released, there is a option now on YouTube where if you have a video, like I have many photo slideshows or event films where there's both the video from on the event and then photos from the event, you're able to now right-click on a YouTube video at that, let's say, photograph, for example, if it's a photo slideshow, or the photo slideshow section of that event film if it's an event film. You're able to right-click once, and then the drop-down menu comes, and then you right-click again to get a second but different drop-down menu. And on the second time that you right-click on that, you go to the very bottom option on the drop-down menu, and there is the ability to take that screenshot. And it's like a copy-paste option sort of thing, but you're able to click on that last option to be able to do that, and you're able to get photos, image capture from your videos on YouTube. So that's a good thing to know. That's something that I recently noticed here in the last week or so. Let me check the time. And when I say time, it's not only time I'm checking the whole setup, because as I said, I'm still learning this particular device. And this is part of my practice. When I had been in Rome, some of the very, very magical trips in the world. Now I'm jumping from technology into some of my travel experiences, because I think about some of the fantastic reasons to visit here in Georgia, or some of the things as a traveler or a tourist or even an expat to see here. I'm also been through, a total of at least 30 different countries, expat, tourist style, or on layover, feet on the ground. And I've had some amazing, very magical travels. And I was thinking about Rome and how I'd stopped in the Rome City Hostel, and the guy that owned the place told me, you've got to see Caputin Crypt. And people fly in here from all over the world, and sometimes they fly here only to see the Caputin Crypt. And I didn't know anything about it, but there I was at Rome City Hostel, and there were a number of other travelers, including a few married couples. It's a budget, very economical way to travel, to stay in a hostel. And I was within about a 3 or 4 minute walk from a metro there in Italy, And having been here in this area for a good 10 years off and on, metros are, you know, a very quick, inexpensive way to get around this city, for example, here in Tbilisi, the capital city of Georgia. So there I was in Rome, and I went and checked it out. I had no idea. But they had taken 4,000 bones from the Catholic friar monks, the Catholic monks that said, you know, we're going to donate our bodies, our bones, for this project. And the project was the Caputin Crypt. It was the exhibition it's in 5 different catacombs, where they've taken bones of the arms and the legs and even the hip bones and the skulls, and they've arranged them into various forms of art that is on the ceiling, or that make up the lamp lights or the candle holders, which now is usually the electric light. And they're in different artistic arrangements on the wall. And it was so thick with bone dust when I walked in there and was observing this. There was no photos allowed, though you can look it up on Wikipedia or a Google image search or another search engine's images search, for example. Caputin Crypt in Rome. And I don't know if it's officially part of the Catholic Vatican, you know, or not, in terms of their museum, but if not, or if it is, but the actual, another one of their museums is right next to it if it's not actually a part of it. Because I remember walking and going down a little bit to get into the catacombs, these 4 or 5 catacombs, which is the Caputin Crypt. So the Catholic monks, the friars, they donated their bodies for this exhibition to teach people for generations to come that would come to see this display about the brevity of life, about the short experience that is life. You know, like we're all earthworms, we're human beings, we're here for just what seems to be a minute and then we're gone again. You know, we're like daffodils. We bloom into the sunshine and the next day we're wilting and we're back into the earth. You know, this kind of thing. So that was the purpose of this exhibition. And it very much reminded me of Robin Williams' Dead Poets Society. And Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society is the professor that in one particular scene, a very moving, profound scene in the movie, talks about the meaning and the inspiration of carpe diem, seize the day. Because he as a professor, as a teacher, is teaching the youth. I believe it's in prep school, I don't remember if it's at college or university level, but teaching them the urgency of following your passion and of getting out there and being active and part of life. And that really comes to mind after this period of being in lockdown, so to speak, or quarantine or emergency medical law, where everything and everywhere pretty much was, except for essential business, shut down. Very limited. So a lot of thinking and a lot of reminders come back in terms of my past experience in travel, but also in beautiful, wonderful, fantastic films like Robin Williams, The Dead Poets Society. There's a couple where he's in where it's been life-changing films for me. But life-changing films and life-changing travel, stopping in there at Rome City Hostel and having that experience. And there was so much bone dust in there from the Catholic monks, their bones, that I actually was coughing. I could actually taste, I actually was coughing just purely on the dust of the bones of our Catholic friends. And I laugh and I grin because I have a very good friend that has been around since we met, I think it was about age 13 or so, at Blue Springs High School. We've been friends ever since. And he's quite the world traveler also. I think he's traveled maybe a bit more. In fact, he has traveled a bit more than I have in the last 6 to 8 months of the last year. He's been in 6 or 8 countries, at least. And he's one of the few people that would, I don't know if he's traveled as much as I have, but would be getting close to that. But he's Catholic and almost became, I don't know if he became confirmed Catholic or not. There was a physician that I worked with too in Vanderpool Care Incorporated back in 1996 through the year 1999 or so, and he was going for his confirmation in the Catholic Church. So it for me it's a joke. It's kind of a point of humor that, but yet at the same time it's funny because I was actually coughing on the dust of the bones of the Catholic monks there. But the whole point is to take passion and take charge of your life. Take carpe diem, seize the day, make use of your time. And that's a lesson that's really heavy in my life this past year, because there's been a lot of different influences in my personal and public life both that I've you know, that have not been, it's not been steady, stable going. And I think we see that in a very outward way now in the United States, in U.S. society, unfortunately. And that's actually also happened here to some extent. But in the United States right now, we see a lot of divisiveness and instability within the societal and governmental structures. And so this theme comes to mind because, you know, if you let yourself get caught up, there's a lot of good sayings by Napoleon Hill Foundation. And if you are on Facebook and you like inspiration, especially in Think and Grow Rich style by Napoleon Hill, one of the top 10 books of all time, as far as sales or readership and so on, it's always good to go to the Napoleon Hill Foundation and like that page on Facebook, or sign up for their newsletter at the Napoleon Hill Foundation website, or Zig Ziglar. Of course, I like Anthony or Tony Robbins as well. But you will see in these types of inspirations, these authors, these teachers, these educators, they will teach about the importance of taking charge of your own life. And of course, that's also a part of the spiritual teachings by Billy Edward Albert Meyer, the teachings of the truth, the teachings of the spirit, the teachings of life, out of Figu, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland. And that's another excellent set of pages to like or to sign up for newsletters for, especially Figu Switzerland, or American media representative of the Billy Edward Albert Meyer case, Michael Horn at theyfly.com or theyflyblog.com. Because the teaching's very similar in the sense that this is a common thread, a common theme amongst all the names that I just mentioned, all the pages that I just mentioned. And one is taking charge of your own life and being very careful about, you know, it's like, if you don't do that, then somebody else will do it for you. If you don't set your own goals and go after your own goals, then you'll find yourself very often being directed or pulled into the direction of other people's goals or other people's ideas of what is, you know, best for your life. And that may not at all be what is best for your life or your intended path in this life. So you have to be very careful about that, very mindful about that. That's something I've had to pay attention to a lot this year. Just checked everything again. And so I've also checked things like the battery length, not only in the manual or what's online, but in checking the reality to make sure that everything is operating as it should. It's not that complicated, but it's always good to practice and run through everything and not just look into a manual or look online at what things are. An example, one time I had to use the Bear pepper spray here, and had watched a couple of demonstrations online, training videos, how to use the Bear pepper spray. And it looked pretty much like a whoosh, right? Simple, easy, like, oh, it's a poof. It's like Puff the Magic Dragon, just a whoosh. No. In real life, I unloaded that son of a bitch on those dogs, and it choked up rather, didn't choke us out, but it choked up both myself a little bit, not so much, but the guy who was with these dogs that appeared to be, he let them loose, and they come up running, and I'm like, nope, not today, dog. The thing is that I had emptied the whole goddamn can. So, dear friends, the whole point is be careful when you're watching these instruction videos on the internet about products, certain things like that. It's always good to test these things out first in real life, because you may find yourself, for example, in this instance that I'm speaking about, I had the Bear pepper, I've got pepper spray on me right now, as a matter of fact. I always got some things on me. But anyway, this thing was like this, and this guy's walking down the street. Suddenly, the dogs are rushing up to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to get bit. I'm not going to deal with, rabies shot, tetanus shot, visit to the emergency room, visit to all this expense. I'm just like, nope, not gonna. I felt a threat because they were running right up like they're gonna do something. I go, and it was nothing like in the video on YouTube, the training videos from the companies that put these products out. It was nothing like that at all. It wasn't just a little fog. It was a constant stream of, it was like, my God, it was like I just emptied the whole can on these sons of bitches. So you want to be very careful with that, and it's always good. Practice, practice, practice with your equipment, with your products. Get to know it, you use it, the better off you are. That's just how it has to be. There's no replacement for experience. There's no replacement for doing something and practicing something and working with your equipment, or working with, whatever it is you're doing, just work, 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 practice, practice, practice. Because I was under the impression, it was more like a fogger, like a little puff, that's it. And I couldn't understand how it could take down a bear. I figured, well, maybe it's just so strong and hot, bears' noses are so sensitive that maybe that's how it works. No, I can't understand how I wouldn't expect that they would have misrepresented the product, but like I said, in my experience, it was more like a goddamn fire hydrant, man. It was like a fire hose. It was like a fire extinguisher. It was like, and then I emptied the whole goddamn can on them. I guess I just wasn't taking any chances that day. And but I stayed safe, and I didn't get bit. Didn't have to go to the doctor. I didn't have to go to the emergency room. I didn't have to get a tetanus shot or rabies shot or something like that. And I doubt that. In fact, there was another dog on that same street, but it was late at night, and there were 3 or 4 other people walking down. They'd walk down to the grocery store about 11 or so at night, and this Cujo style, those that know Cujo, this Cujo style dog came out and just like he was gonna rip a hole in your ass. He'd come out and just no warning, no notice. He'd come right out of this fence. He had dug a little hole under there, and he knew when to come out and just scare the hell out of people. So I have one of these pepper spray devices I've got on me right now, and I just a little whip. That's all, just a little whip of the pepper spray, and not only did he shut up forever, he disappeared after that. I guess he got tired of screwing with people. Citizens here just out for the nightly stroll to go get a beer or water or whatever the hell they're going after, whatever they're after at the local store, grocery store. Anyway, moral of the story that I want to share that I got from all that is be sure to test your products, and don't pay attention to these videos on YouTube because they're not always accurate. Intentionally or not, always double check everything. Use it. Can't even always trust manuals with this stuff. So on that note, I'm going to test this. Check it right now. So, I had a teacher at Missouri Valley College I like to talk about. He made a big impact on my life. I still remember in world religions, and also another college course I took from Dr. Tim Nelson on philosophy. And philosophy was one of the most important classes I took. Because it teaches you a question to think, to consider your logic, your way of looking at things, to ask questions about whatever you read from whatever sources you read, and to think for yourself. This is one of the most important classes that kind of woke me up to a greater level of awareness and understanding at Missouri Valley College there in Marshall, Missouri, in Saline County, in Missouri, the United States, the center of America, the great American Midwest, where the accent that we are using there, especially in North Missouri, is it's called the American General Standard Accent, or the General American Standard Accent. It's most often used by journalists and in movies out of Hollywood. If they want to use a General American Standard Accent, it's from Missouri. And one of the first schools of journalism is actually where I attended university for a short time at among the many was at Columbia, Missouri, University of Missouri, and that School of Journalism there is one of the first in American history, one of the oldest. So it's also considered, in terms of Kansas City, Missouri, one of the prime test market locations in the whole United States. If you want to test a new product or service, that's where you do it. If you're big corporate America and you want to test a product and you want to see if it's going to go or not, you do it in Kansas City. Because if it doesn't make it there, they figure that it's not going to be a good investment in terms of a mass market product. Just a little bit of background about my home area and where I grew up back in Missouri. Okay, so a lot of people out here tonight. It's a lovely evening here in Tbilisi. There is a guy carrying the heavy tripod, and I think that's a cameraman. Yeah, he's got, they are, I think they're either media people or they're professional film makers. They're media people or they're filmmakers, I can't tell. A woman and two guys. Anyway, that's not unusual here. It's very common to see someone doing what I'm doing here right now, which is making some sort of report for a television program here or media news or something like this. So, Dr. Tim Nelson at Missouri Valley College was my philosophy teacher and world religions teacher, and he always taught if you really want to learn about your own country, your own culture, the best thing to do is go live in another country. He had to leave because of political persecution and lived, I believe it was Sweden for a while. It might have been Norway, but I think, or Denmark. It was one of the northern European countries. And it was quite different, a little bit more socialist, but quite different just in the fact of how they lived and how they did things and how all that worked out. But his political persecution, I don't remember if it's because he was like Presbyterian, which is kind of the religion that Missouri Valley College is based on, or more Methodist, or if he was associated with the old Rock Church there in Marshall, Missouri, next to or near the town Marshall Cinema. You know, where you can go and pay to watch movies, new releases from Hollywood. I'm not sure, but I can't find his obituary. I've searched. Now, maybe something changed. Maybe it's because I'm overseas and the filters are set different for searches. I don't know, but I couldn't find his obituary. And I know sometimes I have to use a VPN and set it back to Missouri to see certain local news, and maybe his obituary is in there and I just couldn't see it. Nevertheless, I couldn't find his obituary, but he was a fantastic teacher. And I also had found a book in a very unusual time, an unusual location in life, by Dr. Leo Buscaglia, an Italian-American professor and teacher who was inspired to begin to write and teach the first books and courses on love, and specifically the introductory course, Love 101, at the University of California, I believe, in California, after he had either witnessed or knew the student, I believe it was a female, that had committed suicide. And so it deeply disturbed him and many others on the campus, so he began to teach about love. Loving, living, and learning is one of the first books I've read by Dr. Leo Buscaglia, and he also taught that if you really want to understand your own people, your own culture, your own country, the best thing to do is go live at least 6 months or more in another country, preferably one that's very undeveloped, or what some would be calling maybe third world country, or that's very economically disadvantageous compared to, like the United States, for example. He goes, until you do that, until you've had that experience, you really don't know and understand your own culture and your own people to the level and the depth, by virtue of this contrast and this experience, that you could ever do any other way. I mean, you can't do that by reading, you can't do that by watching a film. You have to go and live and have that experience. And I've had that experience many times in life. Many times in life. in the last 15 years as an expat and tourist style international traveler. Any of you that don't know what expat style travel is, you can look up EXPAT, expat. It's somebody that lives for an extended period of time in foreign land other than their own country. So this is the second professor that I learned this concept from, and believe me, at that time in my life, at those times in my life, both. One was, this is going back to 1990 or 91, 92, and then again in 94, 95. So, 15 years ago, I'm sorry, 25 years ago, 25 years ago, 27 years ago, 28 years ago, if you would have asked me about going overseas and traveling, or me having an expat style life, I mean, I will say that I got another hint from Ralph D. Thomas. I believe his name was Ralph D. Thomas. Ralph Thomas. Celebrity known, well-known author and private investigator. And I had a whole stack of books from Lumpanics, Platten Press, and other book dealers that were very, very rare and hard to find underground knowledge. And I've had many books from many sources like that, like Lance Spicer's Underground Knowledge, or Underground Books 1 through 4 or 1 through 5. I own them as well. They're back in Saline County right now in Missouri. He's a former international tax police investigator, international. Lance Spicer with Trident Press. So I have, like stacks of these books back home that I had. But Ralph's book defined freedom as 2 or 3 legitimate passports, and like a stack of cash, like at least $1 million in cash or so, and maybe even a couple of good weapons with silencers, that kind of thing. So Ralph was a private investigator for the wealthy and the famous, and he was an international private investigator, an American private investigator. But outside of that, if you would have asked me 28 or 30 years ago if I had ever thought outside of that, because he advised this type of thing, and the PT, the privacy thoroughly, the perpetual traveler, the PT flag theory, the 5 flag theory, PT, the PT 7 flag theory now, W.G. Hill, that author. Besides those authors, if you would have asked me 28 or 30 years ago would I've ever considered the lifestyle that I've had the last 15 years, I would say absolutely not. It seemed too far out, too exotic, too unusual. Now, if you look at International Living magazine, International Living newsletter online, let me check the time. If you look at International Living newsletter, and I recommend that if anyone has an interest in these types of topics or this type of lifestyle, International Living. Shamrock PT, which is SHAMROCK, Shamrock PT, I think it's either out of Ireland or Scotland. It's probably Irish. Anyway, that newsletter is also a PT-based, perpetual traveler, privacy thoroughly, or these kind of themes on the PT lifestyle. The 5 flag PT theory, also Nomad Capitalist on YouTube, or even Sovereign Man newsletter, Sovereign Man. All these, and also Expat World out of Singapore. It's also another newsletter and book reports source on the expat PT lifestyle. So Grandpa and others has a book on PT, or also Portable Trades and Occupations, 2020 is another. All this is a type of theory or philosophy that International Living doesn't necessarily talk about that, and from what I've seen or what I know, but it is very similar in the sense that people that are subscribing to or reading International Living newsletter, which I mentioned Winton in a previous time, where he has a book out. This man's put out a video introduction to his book on the gig economy. Not only the gig economy, but remote work, earning as an independent contractor, earning through remote work online, or earning different sources of income while you're in foreign countries. And so his book on that topic just come out, and it's Winton is his first name that he's going by, and that's being offered through International Living Newsletter as well. So if you will follow International Living Newsletter, if you'll either subscribe through an email or like them on Facebook, you will be forever inspired as long as you're following them as well. And these other sources that I mentioned, Nomad Capitalist on YouTube, the Sovereign Man Newsletter, Expat World out of Singapore, or even, like I said, Grandpa and others has the PT books, or like Portable Trades and Occupations 2020, like PTO for short. There was these reports, and Expat World out of Singapore has had some of these to offer in the past. So a lot of these ideas, a lot of these concepts and this type of lifestyle are not described as such through International Living, but International Living very much is in alignment with these concepts. Whether they intend to be or not, it doesn't really matter at all. But for example, you can get a report on Uruguay. My former wife and I had gotten a report while we were in Panama. We were going to travel to Uruguay in South America, and a friend of mine who's also very well-traveled, international travel, he spent considerable time as a musician in Germany and in Japan and other parts of Europe, but especially in Germany and Japan, where he actually was a musician working for Universal Studios. He was a drummer, jazz drummer. Anyway, he was looking just some short time ago about a passport citizenship, second citizenship option in Uruguay, which is a very good second citizenship or passport option, because they have like 180 countries that you're pretty much available to travel without restrictions or complications in. It's a very good passport to travel on, and that's in Uruguay. So if you were to go and get something like 5 hectares of land and raise some cattle or something, and in 2 years of being there in Uruguay with this land ownership and residency, then you can actually qualify for the citizenship option to actually get the passport. And Uruguay has a lot of positives about it. In fact, I think Montevideo, Montevideo's like on a shoreline there with a beautiful beach and a very trendy art culture, entertainment style, very cosmopolitan. It's kind of like the Switzerland of South America. So this was another option that you can learn about with it extensively through a report available through International Living, for example. And that is one option that Yulia and I looked at going and pursuing while we were in Panama. But then she lost a passport, and that really displeased her a lot. That's a whole other story. I've got a lot of stories about travel. Oh my God. And but we had actually planned to take a motorcycle. We were going to buy a motorcycle and just go all the way through from Panama through Colombia, down through Brazil, on down to Uruguay. But the passport thing for her, that was about a 4-month ordeal. By the time that was rolling around and getting resolved, because of dealing with the Ukrainian government was nothing easy for her. A long, delayed, difficult process. We didn't fulfill our plan. But before that, she was very excited about that, and that was a solid option for us. We were going to go to Uruguay. So let me check the time. So International Living, you can get the report on Uruguay and many other countries. Expat World, same thing. You can get reports from Expat World out of Singapore. I'm not sure what Shamrock PT is doing. follow them for a while. I have a subscription to Sovereign Man. Um, I do from time to time look to see what Nomad Capitalist on YouTube is doing, what videos he's putting out. In fact, I think the problem there is I haven't liked his Facebook page. I had a change up there, so I need to go back and like his Facebook page, Nomad Capitalist. He's visited here in Tbilisi, by the way. Very knowledgeable. So those are some sources on the PT theory. Again, Portable Trades and Occupations, or PTO 2020, and look up International Living Newsletter, Winton, W-I-N-T-O-N. His latest work is out just in the last week or so. And I've seen his video where he introduces some of these new software apps, some of these new technologies as far as remote work and the gig economy and things like that, for those that are following this type of lifestyle. And that's the most important point that I can make. The International Living Newsletter is kind of like the premier standard for people that are expats. And maybe not even if you're an expat. Maybe you just want to take a vacation outside the United States and go someplace for, even if it's 2 weeks, even if it's a month, European style length of vacation, right? You can learn a lot just from the newsletters and the postcards. International Living Newsletter postcards is another option. And they've got a whole team of great writers with great experience on various locations and their top choices of best countries to expat to or to travel and spend a considerable amount of time with around the world. And all the pluses and minuses for each. So it's highly recommended. And even if you're a dreamer, it's a good place to be inspired ongoing and a good way to get ideas and keep up the motivation and inspiration to make your dreams come true if you're interested in international travel. This gives a brief but not complete background of some of my inspiration, of some of my early sources of thought on the international expat style life. It actually heavily also goes back to Billy Edward Albert Meyer and Figu, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland, and some of the writings and some of the things that he's written about and information that he puts out. And I'm not going to touch upon that too much right now. I've already mentioned Michael Horn at theyfly.com or theyflyblog.com as his American media representative, and actually Figu, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland, are just two of many, many sources of freely available information on what he's writing about and what he's talked about in terms of the future, the present situation and the future situation here in the world. So those are a combination of the different factors. They're not all of them, but they're the more ideological, the more philosophical, the more practical, down to earth, and that might seem to be an ambiguity for some of those that have already studied some of these topics deeply, of which I've just mentioned the sources of, from my perspective, and how I've come to develop my worldview from both experience, but before I jumped into this direction. There's other factors, but those are some of the more overlaying greater themes in my life and those sources of inspiration. You know, the professors, the books, the newsletters, the websites, but especially the books. I have had just stacks of books in each of these areas of study. And so, and they're very hard to find. Even still, they're very hard to find. In fact, some of the books that I've had, I'm not sure. Like about Ralph D. Thomas, I had to look his website up. I think Lumpanics no longer exists. I think Paladin Press, I'm not sure they exist any longer. Very hard to find some of these sources of information. So International Living Newsletter caters to an entire population, especially outside of the United States, that has chosen to live an international expat style life. Some of them do it on a small pension or a full pension or a Social Security check or whatever, but a lot of these sources, including Expat World out of Singapore, had rated Panama as being one of the top expat destinations in the world. Now, Thailand's very popular, but quite a different situation altogether. So, I think I'm going to close on that. I had lost some footage where I had talked about, with great passion and great excitement, about some of my travels across the world and in different places like New Zealand, Amsterdam, Italy, and you know, part of that trip was made by train through Belgium, and that was back in 2005 in particular. Although I've had many trips to Switzerland and Rome, and it is the New Zealand and Amsterdam experience happened within the same month period of time, 2 months actually. But it's such fantastic, magical, mystical, super journey. I really should write it all down. I've talked about it in other places before, written about it. I'm not sure that those writings or videos are still in existence now. And I would probably need about a month or 2 or 3 to get all of this down in either video format or into written format. But those that have heard it or have read it, they're in agreement that it's been a very magical life for those periods of time. There's been the periods of time where it's not been magical. You know, this has been one of the more difficult periods in this last year that I've ever experienced in my life. It's not the only one, but I would put it in the top 3 periods in my life this last year. And it's a global phenomenon, so I don't count that much as anything other than sometimes these experiences come in life. In fact, I've gotten through some fantastic material in this kind of downtime, so to speak, that I'm forever grateful for, both the time and the material that I've gone through and used productively in this time, on a personal level, on a very productive level. Anyway, I'll stop with that. There's so many magical experiences with these travels. It's just, you know, and I mean a lot. It's I could name like 10 points right now of just one year journey, for example, all the way across the world and back. Well, yeah, pretty much all the way. And not just the travel, but the experiences along the way. You know. But I started the video off talking near the beginning about the fantastic tool that is Zoom meetings, and how fantastic it was, how wonderful it was to be in a Zoom meeting with an organization that's been around forever, but in the United States incorporated since 1915. And with almost 800 people, where we're just sharing information. You're just hearing others present questions or comments or share stories and then comment with each other. The ability to do that in today's time with people from all over the earth, real time. I mean real time, not, you know, real time. Video, audio with that option in a meeting, telephone or you know, through the internet. That's just powerful. It's very powerful. And I'm so happy that I had that experience, because I actually heard from people around the United States and the world. But the people in the United States, me being from there and spending time there, it was really helpful for me to get a deeper understanding of different perspectives from people around the United States on what's really you know, their feelings and their perspectives on what's really happening there right now, from different levels of society, different perspectives from people all over the United States, but all over the world too. That was so fun and so cool that, you know, as I said earlier, some were from island nations, others from Australia, just all over the world. And so to be able to have that kind of sharing, that kind of discussion, both on video or audio, which both are options, your choice, through Zoom meetings is fantastic. But on an educational level, like I mentioned, super, on a masterclass level, or just the ability to both ask questions and get questions live, instantly answered by experts, some of the best, top, #1 in the world, that opens up a whole new era of learning and sharing and growing. And so that's pretty exciting. It's really exciting. And it's a hell of a business tool. It's a hell of an educational tool. And it is a massive tool if you're a journalist or you're just wanting to have a format to share information instantly. Can you imagine? Instantly you can share your story, your feelings, your questions, your comments with almost, in this one meeting I just had, almost 800 people from around the world. Just clearly, instantly, without problems, without, and everyone is attentively listening and exchanging with you. It's just amazing. It's really amazing. And as I mentioned earlier on in the video too, to be able to ask one of the best teachers in the world, one of the best life coaches in the world, in the area that you're there to study on it, and to be one of the first to ask her this question and live get an answer from her, about a 3 or 4 minute answer with somewhere between 250 and 700 participants. It's really quite fantastic. And I'll really close with this. One of the beautiful things about classes at Missouri Valley College is that it was very often you could have about 15 to 25 students. It's a private college, very expensive. And I attended there for about a year and a half, and that's where I had Dr. Tim Nelson as my professor, doctorate professor in world religions class and the class on philosophy. Now, at the University of Missouri, it was quite different. You could have more of a lecture hall scenario in which you could have that at Missouri Valley College too, but it was more rare that you would have 50 or 100 students in a class. That was pretty rare. It'd be something like theater. But at University of Missouri, you could easily have 100 or 250 people in a class. But you could also get it down to where there may be 25 or 50, but they were larger classes and much bigger university campus. You know, it's one of the top 10 in some lists in America. And I only attended there for a summer semester and another, an autumn semester. But when I was at Central Missouri State University, which is now CMU, Central Missouri University in Warrensburg, those classes were more somewhere between average 25 to 50, more mid-range. And that's a state university. So, but the way that the Zoom meetings work, you can get the best of both in that scenario. Because even though there may be close to 800 people in that meeting that I was in, online Zoom meeting, with one of the oldest and most interesting organizations in the world, or the educational Zoom meeting that I was in on another, where I'm able to ask the instructor, life coach, teacher live, the best in the world. She's the best at what she does. And I'm actually getting a live answer right there in front of, somewhere between 250 and 700 students. It's just really fantastic. So I'm pretty excited about Zoom and where this can lead our humanity, our people in this time on this planet. Although it seems to me, and in my opinion, from the way I see things, to be one of the most challenging times. So that's the reason I want to share this. It's an experience that I've had. It's real. It's personal, but it's real. It's authentic. And I want to share that with my friends, with my viewers, with people that may see my YouTube channel or my, wherever you may see this. Maybe it's Facebook. Maybe it's somewhere else besides YouTube or Facebook. But that's what I want to share with you. So whoever you are, whoever's watching, you have that opportunity to learn and to interact, because unfortunately, we've gone through this time, and some people may see this time again where, for a period of time, society may be kind of under an emergency medical law or something like this. So there's always the opportunity to grow, although I don't think these things replace at all real life interaction and real life social activity in real life, physically, off the internet, off the virtual world. But it is an option that can be an addition to one's sharing, communicating, learning, education, or journalism experience, whichever the case may be. So anyway, have a nice evening.